Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. And if you're a true General Hospital fan, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Now let's get started with today's video. According to General Hospital, GH, teasers, Anna Devane, Finola Hughes, is about to go on a disastrous journey that will endanger lives. Britt Westbourne, Kelly Thiebaud, could be in serious danger, so she'll definitely need someone to pull off a dramatic rescue. Anna is fitting back into Port Charles, both personally and professionally, but she is concealing a terrible secret. Anna pretends her mental health crisis is over, but visions of Peter August, Wes Ramsey, continue to haunt her. Of all, the GH summer preview teasers have stated that Anna will return home with lethal intentions. That makes sense, given that this version of Peter is pushing Anna to seek vengeance and make risky decisions. In the July 22nd episode, when Anna spoke with Jack Brennan, Chris McKenna, about the Ross Cullum, Andrew Hawks shooter case, Peter complained that Anna was wasting time and argued she should have asked about Britt. Cassius Faison, Ryan Pavey, isn't around to face Anna's fury, so she might have to focus on Britt instead. With Peter at the wheel, Anna's urge to pursue Caesar Faison's, Anders Hove, daughter may grow stronger, resulting in some unexpected outcomes. We know Anna's murderous mission is underway, so a Britt murder plot might be on the horizon. What happens if Anna goes too far and puts Britt's life in danger? That could mean Britt needs a hero to step up and save her from a terrible fate. Jason Morgan, Steve Burton, has previously rescued Britt and may do so again, but there is an alternative to consider. Jason may no longer be the ideal person to save Britt's life, as he is preoccupied with Danny Morgan, Asher and Tonizin, and attempting to avoid trouble. Perhaps Tristan Roberts, Dean Geyer, may be in the right location at the right time to help Britt when she is in danger. Britt's quarrel with Tristan may blossom into appreciation and a new friendship if he eventually saves her from Anna. According to General Hospital spoilers, Anna will become further unhinged as a result of these Peter hallucinations, so keep an eye out for any horrible Britt news. The humid air of Tortola clung to the cottage like a second skin, smelling of salt and distant rain. Britt Westbourne stood at the tiny wooden table, the syringe in her fingers catching the late afternoon light streaming through the louvered windows. Outside, the Caribbean waves whispered against the coast, a sound that had once promised escape, but now highlighted how utterly she had run out of options. Rocco was gone. Dante and Lulu had snatched him, their expressions a mix of rage and hesitant gratitude. She'd demanded. She had lied just enough to convince him that it was safer this way. Cullum's unfinished purpose demanded that she remain a risk to the boy she had once carried, abandoned, and then found again. She took a slow breath and readied the injection. The drug had come via a series of meticulous intermediaries, with Cassius, of all persons, arranging the delivery following Rocco's urgent calls. Britt had not trusted the source, but the shaking in her hands and the gathering fog on the corners of her vision left her with little options. Huntington's did not negotiate. She'd been living on borrowed time for months, with each injection providing a temporary reprieve from execution while she fulfilled what Sidwell and Cullum asked in exchange for the only therapy that kept the sickness under control. The needle hovered. She didn't hear the footsteps on the gravel path until the door burst open. Two officers dominated the picture, their voices harsh and their firearms drawn. Britt Westbourne, you've been arrested for the kidnapping of Rocco Falconeri. The syringe slid from her fingers and rolled across the flooring. For a split second, she mistook it for one of Cullum's intricate traps, designed to force her back inside the lab. Then the cuffs clicked around her wrists, and the reality became clear. Dante had placed the call. Of course he did. The guy who had previously been her reluctant friend in defending Rocco had chosen the law over the woman who had stolen his son for the second time. They marched her outside into the heat. The bungalow vanished behind them, leaving the syringe where it had landed. She had no idea at the time that the clear liquid within was not medication. Cullum had exchanged the vials days before. The dose intended to calm her hands and quiet her thoughts would have halted her heart in minutes. The humiliating, public, and furious arrest saved her life. The airline ride back to Port Charles was a swirl of metal and neon lighting. Britt sat silently between the officers, watching the water fade into cloud and finally back to the familiar gray of upstate New York. She remembered Rocco's expression when she urged him to leave, how he had battled her, and how he had eventually accepted the bottle of bubbles she placed into his hands like a talisman. She recalled the incomplete work in Winmere's sub-basement, the prototype that Sidwell had requested and that she had purposefully delayed. She thought of Jason, of the fleeting hope they had shared across countries, and how completely she had burnt every bridge that could have taken her back to him. The PCPD's booking process was swift and cold. Fingerprints, photographs, the formal reading of the charges. Dante stood on the other side of the glass for a moment, arms folded, his expression unreadable. Lulu was nowhere in sight. Britt did not request a lawyer. She was well aware of the structure of the case against her. She'd abducted the boy. She'd kept him hidden. The fact that she did it to protect him from Cullum would make little difference in a courtroom that had already determined what kind of woman she was. They put her in a holding cell. The time passed slowly. Beyond the concrete boundaries, Port Charles continued its tumultuous existence. Anna Devane was back in the city, or so the guard's radio chatter indicated, released from the French institution, cleared, reinstated, and already strolling through the corridors of the PCPD as if the months of confinement and gaslighting had never occurred. Britt closed her eyes and tried not to visualize Anna's interaction with Dante, the questions she would ask, and the calm rage she would unleash on anyone associated with the Faison clan. When the cell door opened again, Dante was not standing there. Anna Devane appeared smaller and thinner than Britt remembered, the sharp edges of her face softened with tiredness. But the eyes were the same, clear, evaluating, and completely merciless. "We need to talk," Anna remarked. They escorted her to an interview room. There were no handcuffs this time, just the two of them and a table covered in confessions from years past. Anna sat across from her, folding her hands. "Cassius held me," Anna stated without preface. "He replayed Faison's best hits in my head until I couldn't distinguish which memories were real. He employed every trick your father had taught him. You knew he was here. You realized he was claiming to be Nathan. You said nothing." Britt's throat clenched. "They said I was dying. They maintained control of the medication. I figured if I finished the work, they'd let me leave long enough to visit Rocco one more time. I didn't know about you." "Too late is a convenient phrase in your family," Anna said calmly. "Faison trained his children well. Prey on weakness. Take advantage of your loyal customers. Survive at any costs. You and Cassius are cut from the same cloth." The words hit hard. Britt had spent years attempting to outrun that particular inheritance. She had failed more times than she had succeeded. The hook. The feigned death. Returning under duress. Every option seems to go back to the same genetic blueprint. "I tried to protect people," Britt explained. "Rocco, Jason, even you, in my own messed-up manner. I postponed the prototype. I lied about who shot Cullum so Rocco wouldn't have to take the blame. I was going to inject myself with what I believed was the sole thing keeping me alive, and then I was going to vanish. That was the plan." The police interrupted it. Anna looked at her for a long time. Something changed behind her eyes. Not forgiveness, but a colder form of calculating. "The syringe they found in the bungalow," Anna explained. "Lab findings arrived an hour ago. It was not your medication. It was a highly concentrated neurotoxic. Cullum intended to kill you when you used it. The arrest saved your life." Britt felt the room sway. She'd known Cullum was capable of anything. She had not anticipated the efficiency of the stealthy exchange of one clear liquid for another. "Who else knows?" she asked.
"Dante. Me."
The lab technician who led the panel. "That's all for now," Anna said, leaning forward. "Here's what will happen. You're going to tell me everything, every chat with Sidwell, every detail of the prototype, and every name Cullum has mentioned. In return, I will ensure that the kidnapping accusation is lowered. You will still face the repercussions. You will not walk free. But you will not spend the remainder of your brief life in a maximum security jail while the men who exploited you continue to operate in the dark." Britt laughed dryly. "You're offering me a deal." I'm offering you a chance to do something that isn't entirely selfish before the disease finishes what Cullum started. The hours that followed were spent carefully excavating memory. Britt described the lab beneath Windmere, the push to develop a delivery system capable of weaponizing more than just medication, and how Sidwell dangled the Huntington's treatment as a carrot while Cullum held the stick. She detailed the night on the pier, the gunshot, and how she awoke to see Jason and expected the worst. She admitted her lies. She made no apologies for defending Rocco. At that point, she remained unmoving. Anna listened attentively, taking exact notes. When Britt finished, the older woman closed the journal and sat down. "There is one more thing," Anna remarked. "Cassius is still out there. He has resources. He has Faison's talent for reinvention. If he believes you're complying, he'll come get you. The same is true with Cullum. The department can protect you up to a point. Beyond that point, you'll need individuals willing to stand between you and those who want you dead." "I don't have those people anymore," Anna said, her expression remaining unchanged. "You got me. For the moment. Because I value what you know more than the thrill of witnessing another Faison child harm herself. Do not mistake that for affection." They moved Britt to a secure ward of General Hospital under the guise of medical examination. Huntington's markers were advancing quicker than prior tests had predicted. The interim remedy that Cullum had controlled was no longer available. Jason's earlier suggestion, reverse engineering a sustainable alternative, felt less like a faraway hope and more like a firm deadline. The next morning, Elizabeth Weber arrived in the doorway of the private room, clipboard in hand, her look intentionally bland. "Stella and I spoke with the board. They are willing to reinstate you on an interim basis. Probation, nights, inventory, art therapy for pediatric patients. You'll be watched closely." Britt looked at her. "Why?" "Because you remain one of the best diagnosticians this hospital has ever had. And because the alternative is to let the disease kill you while the people who attempted to murder you go free." Elizabeth placed down the clipboard. "Don't make us regret it." The days that followed established a strange new rhythm. Britt worked the night shift, so the corridors were calmer and there were less patients. She refilled supply closets and sat with youngsters who were too little to understand why the doctor with a gentle smile occasionally had to steady her own hands before she could steady theirs. She avoided the main lobby. She avoided the stairway, where Anna had accosted her. She avoided any hallways that could lead her past Jason. He eventually found her. It was after midnight when he emerged in the supply room's doorway, the rain still staining the shoulders of his jacket. For a minute, neither of them spoke. Britt then put down the box of gloves she had been counting and waited. "I heard about the syringe," he explained. "Anna told you." "Dante did." Anna verified it. He entered and locked the door. "You nearly died because of me. Because I left you alone with them. I nearly died because I made a series of disastrously terrible mistakes and trusted the wrong people. You can't claim ownership of that." Jason's jaw hardened. "Rocco told me everything you said to him. That you did not want him to see you die. That you wanted him safe." "I meant it. I know." He stared at her for a long time. "I am not here to fix anything. I'm here because those who attempted to kill you are still alive. And because Anna is putting up a case, they will need someone who understands how they think. Someone who has already endured them." Britt felt the familiar pull, the part of her that still believed she could be useful without destroying everything she touched. "Anna doesn't trust me." "Not entirely. But I trust the part of you that saved Rocco when no one else could. That part is still in there." Outside the supply room, the hospital maintained its never-ending cycle of crises and recoveries. Cullum was regrouping somewhere in the city. Cassius was watching from somewhere. Somewhere, Rocco was trying to sleep in a bed that no longer felt like home. Britt picked up the box of gloves again. "If I assist, it will not be for redemption. It will be because I refuse to let them win." Jason nodded briefly. "That's enough for now." He left her among the shelves of antiseptic goods, the fluorescent light pulsing overhead. Britt finished the inventory, signed the form, and headed down the quiet hallways to the pediatric wing. A child waited for a story. She'd promised. For the first time in a long time, she planned to retain it. The murder plot had failed. The arrest had been a rescue disguised as punishment. Anna's interrogation had been a doorway, not a wall. And somewhere between the cottage in Tortola and the fluorescent hallways of General Hospital, Britt Westbourne was given one more chance to select what type of woman she wanted to be before the disease made the choice for her. The tropical air on Tortola was thick and oppressive the night Britt Westbourne stood alone in the modest bungalow, the small vial of what she thought was her life-extending prescription shaking between her fingers. Outside, the distant roar of waves hitting the coast was accompanied by the quiet murmur of insects, but within, the silence was absolute. Rocco Falconeri had finally left with Dante and Lulu after a heartbreaking confrontation that left Britt's chest throbbing in ways that Huntington's disease could never do. She had forced the decision on him, saying that the safest place for the boy she had brought into the world was with his parents, far away from the target Cullum had painted on her back. Now the house felt hollow. She had told Rocco the truth before he walked out the door. She had worked for Cullum, had become involved in the Cold Fusion Project and the web of falsehoods surrounding Sidwell and the WSB, and the unfinished business she left behind guaranteed the guy would never stop looking for her. The prescription was supposed to give her a little more time, enough to finish whatever work Cullum required, or, more likely, to vanish entirely once the boy was secure. She was unaware that the container in her hand no longer held drugs. Cullum had switched it. The material waiting inside was a fast-acting poison that would permanently mute her once Cassius delivered the gift, and the boy was out of the way. In Port Charles and elsewhere, the pieces of the wider game were already shifting. Cassius, still wearing Nathan West's face, had done his part by supplying information and ensuring the delivery reached Tortola. Anna Devane, who had just returned from the French facility where Cullum's mind tricks had nearly destroyed her, was already stitching together the pieces of the plot. She knew Faison's shadow still hung over the living. Cassius had been schooled in the same terrible ways, and Britt's abrupt arrival and subsequent flight were not coincidental. Britt lifted the syringe as a knock came on the bungalow door. 2 local officers stood on the entrance, holding warrants and handcuffs. Dante had made the call quietly after his disagreement with Britt, to ensure that the lady who had taken his son did not simply vanish into the night. The charge was kidnapping. The timing, on the other hand, was pure accident, or, depending on one's interpretation of fate in Port Charles, something closer to intervention. The officers arrived before the needle could make its mark. Britt's surprise was real. She had anticipated Cullum's men, not the cops. As the cuffs tightened around her wrists, the poison remained unused, and the murder scheme that had been planned hours before disintegrated in the span of a single interruption. Back in Port Charles, the news spread quickly. Lulu and Dante arrived with Rocco, who was somber and conflicted while clutching the bottle of bubbles Britt had put into his hands as a farewell keepsake. The PCPD booking process seemed clinical and impersonal. Britt sat in the holding area, replaying every decision that had led her here. The decision to fake her death years ago to spare her mother the slow decline of Huntington's, the return under Cullum's control, the desperate flight with Rocco when the walls closed in, and the final admission that she had been a willing, if coerced, participant in the larger scheme. She had hoped that the drug would keep her functional long enough to protect the boy. Instead, it had almost become the means of her own silent eviction. Anna Devane got the report while still adjusting to the familiar halls of the PCPD and the WSB's continued presence in her life. The French ordeal had left invisible scars on the surface. She was still unsure which recollections of Faison were genuine and which had been planted or twisted by Cullum's medications and staged encounters. When Felicia sat with her in the silent room after their reunion with Mac and Emma, Anna had said the words that remained between them. Nathan West is not who he claims to be. The revelation had only been the start. The arrest of Britt Westbourne provided a new thread. Anna requested the data on the Spoon Island gunfight, Cassius, the cold fusion experiment, and any other connections that linked Britt to the guys who had kidnapped Anna. She then discovered that some of those files had already gone missing. The absence became evidence. The interrogation that followed was not the formal, recorded type that appears in official records. It occurred on a hospital stairway following Britt's release from immediate custody and her tentative return to General Hospital on probation. Anna's queries were precise and relentless. Had Britt known Cassius? was holding Anna at Windermere?